Hey, what's going on, everyone? Back with another knife overview. Today we are going to be looking at the Custom Knife Factory, or CKF, Rotten Design, Evolution, or Evo 3. And I'm going to kind of switch up how I do my knife reviews based on some feedback that I received. If you're interested in kind of the tech specs of this one, I will post them in the description. Otherwise, I just wanted to go over my thoughts and initial impressions. So a little bit of background on this CKF, again, Custom Knife Factory, Rotten Design. I didn't have any experience with this brand, and so I did try to do a lot of research online to find out more about Custom Knife Factory, as well as John Sorensen, who is the designer of this, and I'll kind of divulge what I found. So this one's going to be made in Russia. However, it's only put together and designed in Russia. It's actually going to be fabricated or made in China. So I think that that's kind of interesting. CKF was actually established in Moscow in 2012. The first knife that CKF put out was the Deception 1. And the idea between CKF, it was kind of like a conglomerate of knife designers that worked under the tutelage of Kevin John, which you hear Kevin John, you're like, who's this guy? It's actually just a bunch of Chinese OEM manufacturers. And certainly in today's day and age, you know, Chinese OEM manufacturing, whether it's WE Knives or Riot, companies like that, they do a really nice job, and the fit and finish is awesome. But, you know, couldn't help myself. Russian designed, Russian put together, manufactured by China. I kind of nicknamed this the Axis of Evil knife, in that it has roots in both China and Russia. And one more kind of interesting plug about Kevin John, because again, the Reddit threads, all that stuff, trying to keep up and find out who this company was. They were actually known to do a lot of Chris Reeve and Strider clones, actually, but they were clones, they weren't copies. Like, they didn't say, you know, Idaho made on them or Strider, M Strider, anything like that. But the idea being that this company or conglomeration, Kevin John, kind of brought to the East those knives that were not easy to get from the U.S. For instance, I read one piece that said, you know, a regular Chris Reeve Sabenza in China can run you as much as $3,000. So again, not blatant ripoffs. And from what I was able to find, you know, CKF, they actually, like, when they make knives, a lot of times their designs are stolen in the manufacturing process as well. So again, they're making clones of very well-known knives to us in the US, but you know, that can kind of leave a bad taste in your mouth. And I read that and I was kind of like, huh, like, oh, that's cool. So a little bit of background on the knife. This is the packaging that it comes with. It's kind of an interesting, like, pillowy case. You know, you get the card here, Evolution 3.0 knife, the designer, mine's an M390. The really interesting thing, and what I did like to see, was the fact that this is serialized, and you can see on here it's number 558. So I think that that's definitely a nice touch. And then they also do give you extra hardware as well as bearings, things of that nature. I've also read a lot of really weird things where people are like, oh, they just supply you with that stuff because they know it's gonna break. I don't think that's the case at all with any knife. And if that's kind of like where your head lies with getting extra hardware, then you have obviously never tried to, you know, order a single bearing for a Shuragorov, for example. Like, I do like the fact that they include that extra hardware, because it really can be an ass pain. It doesn't even matter if it's a US manufacturer. Like, it takes time to get parts, and I don't see it as a weakness at all. I think that that's really cool that they provide the extra parts for this knife right from the jump. All right, next we're going to get into a few comparisons for the Evo 3. And when I saw this thing, again, I was told I was wrong by a couple of my friends, but had to make this comparison. So the Evo 3 as compared to a Strider SMF looks like that. I think this one looks exactly like it. But, okay, then we also have a ProTech Mordax. Looks like that. Next, what did I bring out? Oh, I brought quite a few out today, so this is very exciting. There it is, as compared to a Sabenza 31. And then pulling out all the knives that you all have here. It's going to be an Arcona Buron, another Russian design knife. Looks like that. Or Eastern Bloc. I'm not sure if it's Russia. I totally forget. And then finally, the Evo 3 as compared to a Demco 8020. Looks like that. So we're going to rip right into my observations, and then I will let you all go. Appreciate you all tuning in. All right, my first observation from picking up the Evo 3 was it feels very Stridery. And at first I was like, oh, that makes sense. You know, we have, you know, John Sorensen who learned under Kevin John and they made Strider copies, whatever. Like I was very quick to kind of pick up that blood trail or whatever, but I don't know. Like I was quickly, again, like I talked to my buddy Devin about it. He's like, no, I didn't get that feeling at all, but it does have very SMF-y vibes to me. I mean, whether it's like this, you know, Strider hole, I call it, the blade stops, and honestly, the biggest thing was the hand feel. So the most natural grip for a Strider SMF for me is definitely choked up into this choil right here, and same thing in spades with this Evo is that choked up grip. That is where it feels most natural. When I get back here, it feels like I have a little bit too much blade up here that I don't really have control over, but that choked up grip getting on the jimping, I had Strider SMF written all over it, to be honest with you. Also, the reverse grip here. So this backspacer, again, they have this jimping on the back for that really strong reverse grip. And, you know, same thing with that thumb ramp you have on a Strider SMF. These really reminded me of each other. And, you know, as I've said before, I've had the Strider SMF for a very long time. And just like the hand feel, like I know what this knife is going to be doing. I know how to close it. I know the tensioning, and it was kind of like, you know, the same controls with this one. Like I could close it the same way that I close my Strider. Just felt very, very Stridery to me, and that was my first or initial impression. All right, and I'm just going to kind of blow through the rest of my observations here. You know, time is money, so here we go. So my first observation was just the action out of the box. Now, CKF does this intentionally where they will not tighten down the pivot, but I got this thing, and even kind of knowing that, I was very disappointed in how uncentered the blade was. I don't know why they just don't center it right out of the box, but it was kind of a mess, and it made me a little bit nervous. So I would say if you buy one of these things, like look at that. Look at the blade centering. It probably is going to be really, really loose. You may want to apply some Loctite. I have not yet, but yeah, between that and the lockup, I mean, the lockup was just like barely like in there. It was nothing at all, but I think it's in a pretty good place now. But it was just surprising to me that right out the box, you don't really have like a functioning knife. If you buy one new, you really do have to tune it, which I guess some people would think is cool, but for me, I was a little bit nervous for a second until I looked up how they actually ship these things. All right, next we have to talk about the quality of the titanium and the blade grind. I mean, this thing is absolutely beautiful, but we'll kind of get to it at the end. Like, this is what I've come to expect from Chinese OEM manufacturing. Like, this is a tried and true recipe. We have really nice titanium scales, high quality, again, Bohler M390 steel, running on bearings. This one's a combination of bearings and washers. Like, it's a winning combination, but it's all over the place. And we're going to be talking about that towards the end and a few other videos that I'm going to be doing here in the future. But I really do love the quality of titanium. You have these like striations, like it almost looks like a glacier pushed over this thing. And there's a really nice like lubricity to it too. So the hand feel is completely on point. Another observation that I had was just how wide this blade is. When it is closed, you're really, really close, and I can hit the blade when it's closed, which isn't a big deal, but just be cognizant of that. I mean, you look at this thing, you're like, hey, it's a pretty small package, but when this thing opens up, the blade is huge. Keep that in mind, that blade has to go somewhere. And again, I'm not saying that this is going to cut you. If you have really like chubby fingers, something gets stuck in there, it will cut. But I didn't really like that part of the design, to be honest with you. I really do like the blade shape. This has a huge belly on it, and this is not one of those knives. Like, again, this thing it's big. It's, 3 1/4 inch blade. this isn't one of those things you can kind of like whip out to open up a box at your desk and people aren't like, what in the hell is that thing? This yeah, this thing is it has an attitude all of itself, and I think that that's really cool, but it's something worth noting. It's a big blade. It's much more, to me at least, much more scary than your normal Strider, even though it is about the same size. It's kind of like an apocalyptic kind of looking blade, so just be aware of that. All right, the next observation that I had was just the fit and finish. Once I got this tuned, the fit and finish is really nice, but I just kind of wanted to draw your attention to the internal milling here. I'll try to post a few pictures of it, but again, this is what we have come to expect from Chinese OEM manufacturing. Like they're great at this, right? But this was no exception. So you get that like Shurgoroth flavor with the way that the milling's done on the inside, and it really makes for a very lightweight and well-balanced knife. Like this thing, it's pretty perfect. My last observation is going to be this pocket clip, which I wrote in my notes. I was like, this thing is just like ridiculous. It's huge. There aren't any hot spots when you're holding onto it, which is just due to the sheer size of this thing. But when this is in your pocket, like it is very like visually noticeable. Like I'm not saying like this is in your pocket, you're like, man, I got this huge knife in my pocket, but this clip, like you see it all the time just because it is so big. Like it's almost like cartoonish looking, and for being a fairly lightweight knife, I don't know. I don't think you need that much of a pocket clip. It seems like all the other like bigger knives that I own kind of find a way to make do with a smaller clip in some form or fashion. So that's the end of my observations. I'm going to wrap this video up here and get you on your way. All right, so that includes my overview of the Axis of Evil knife, the CKF Rotten Design Evo 3. I am glad that I got my hands on this one. I did end up buying it, but I bought it from a person who got it on the drop and didn't touch it. I do think that I'm going to move on from this one just because it's not really my style. There's definitely other knives that I like a lot more, but overall, I'm really impressed with this knife. I think it's a cool design, but it is very commonplace for Chinese OEM at this point. And I think the recipe, and I'll get into it in one of my videos coming up, the recipe is a little tired. Like you get high quality steel, titanium handle, bearings, boom, Chinese OEM. Like their manufacturing is awesome. It's going to be great. Although I do think that this is cool, the market is just kind of like over flooded with these high-end Chinese OEM knives that makes the price point of this one in particular at $670 way too steep. The only real saving grace is just kind of that like hype beast culture where you have this knife, limited drops, the Evo 3, like there's a huge following behind this, but at the end of the day, like other Chinese OEM manufacturers are doing this, and I don't know, that kind of makes the price tag a little bit hard to swallow. I really do like the fact that this is going to be a serialized piece and the drops are limited, so it's not like these are in stock everywhere. Even if they were, I think at the MSRP of $670, these would not sell out, but with those limited drops, that kind of helps their cause. So those are my thoughts on this knife. Would love to know y'all's comments. I know there's a lot of guys that are huge fans of this knife. If it's right for you, awesome. Just kind of wanted to give you a little background on the company as, as per my research, and yeah, appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll see you next time.